In this demonstration of the Sugar Platform Extension Framework, a LogicHook extension will be used to execute custom code before a module record is saved.
All right, now what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to make a change such that when I go to a contact record, it will automatically uppercase the last name value upon me clicking the save button. And as you will see, it will be an action that is completely transparent to the user. All right, now in this particular case, it is a customization to the contacts module. So we will go to the custom folder. Again, we're working in extension. When we're defining logic hooks, we always work within the extensions directory as well. And we go to modules. And, whoops, this is the wrong one. Sorry. Custom extension modules. Contacts folder, because contacts module is our target. ext, much like we did in the case of cases. This time around, though, we're going to use a folder called Logic Hooks. Remember, I mentioned to you the fact that there's different types of folders that we can have in here. And there's two parts to a Logic Hook. There's a definition file, which is where we tell it information such as what event we're going to listen to, what code needs to be executed, and so forth. And that's the file that we put into this directory here. In this particular case, again, same conventions, .ext, .ehp. In this case, I happen to call it LogicHooks, so logichooks.ext.php. And then there's a secondary support file, which you're free to store wherever you like, which contains that arbitrary code that will be executed. Personally, I like to put this under the custom folder under modules. So in this particular case, since it's a customization to the contacts module, I'm going to go to custom and then modules and then contacts, and I will store the supporting file in here. Okay, doesn't necessarily have to go in there. I like to use that just for organizational purposes. But the thing about it is that as so long as it's in a directory where the web server can access the file, that's really the main criteria that you need to be aware of. The name of the file doesn't matter. You can name it anything you want. As you'll see in a second, it really has no relevance on Sugar's ability to find it and use it or anything like that, because we control its location through the definition file. But anyways, so there we have the two parts. So we have the definition file under custom extension modules contacts ext logic hooks. Let's open that up. Let's talk about this a little bit. So how do we tell it which event we're listening for? We've got this array called before save that we define. This is where we define the type of event. So it's before underscore save, after underscore save, before delete, after relationship add. That's that list of different events that I was referring to earlier that we have documented in the developer guide. So basically the idea is that you define this hook array and then you give it the name of the event that you're going to be listening to. Then you add an element to that array, and this array has all the information that it needs to know about the code that will be executed as part of the process. Okay? The first parameter is just a priority number. So you can have multiple before save hooks that get triggered, for example, and you might want a specific order in which they get executed. And it's all serial. So anyway, so you give it the number there to determine which one should fire before the others and so forth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the order you want. The next parameter is a general descriptor, so you can put whatever you want in there. The next parameter is the location of the PHP file that contains the arbitrary code that's to be executed when the event fires. Okay, so notice I put that file in custom modules contacts, right? So I just basically made it line up with my definition in here. But in theory, I can name the file anything I want. so long as the definition file is looking for the proper file name and in the proper location, it doesn't really care. The next parameter is the name of the class within that PHP file that it needs to instantiate. And then lastly, the method within that class that should be executed. Okay. So if we take a look at that supporting file, which we stored under custom modules contacts, the upper last name.php, there's that matching class name, and there's that matching method name. And you see that there's a couple of arguments that it's taking. Okay, so first of all, bean is perhaps the most important one of all this and the most often used. What bean represents is the current record. So at the time that I click the save button, because this is a save time event, what was the record that I was on? Okay, bean would give me a representation of that. And what does bean in turn represent? It brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, right? This is an instance of the bean class in this particular case, as represented by the contact object. Okay, args is just the query arguments that might have been passed along, if any. But events would have information like the type of event that was triggered. But anyway, so bean, like I said, is the most commonly used one and very powerful one. So as you can see, given that bean represents the current record that I'm on, I can take the value from the last name field of the current record, store it in another variable, and then convert it to uppercase. And then reassign it back to the current record. Now, because I'm doing this in a before save hook, I don't need to tell Sugar to save it. And apologies, you can ignore this code here. This is for something else that I was playing with. But that's essentially the extent of it right there. You'll notice that I don't have a call here for bean save anywhere. And that's because all of my changes are occurring to this record represented by bean at the time that the save button is clicked, but before the changes are written to the database. So I can manipulate whatever I want, and then I can just let Sugar continue with the rest of its process, and eventually it will kick in the insert or update of SQL query in order to make the change or write the change to the database. Okay. All right, and I can do this with any of the other fields. I can go in there and change the address fields or whatever else. Somewhere in between here, if I wanted to, I could have it hit an external web service, validate some data, and then come based on what response I get from that external web service, I can then manipulate other fields on here. You have to be a little careful with how you do that, though, because obviously this is all happening in a synchronous manner. So the user is going to click the save button, and if you have a lot of processes running here where it needs to validate a lot of data with external services and things of that nature, the user has to wait until all that completes before they get control back. So you got to be careful about how you implement things of that nature. But just to let you know, it is possible to do that. So I mean, I can put whatever logic I want in this block of code here. It doesn't really matter what I put in here. Like I said, I have complete control over that. The only limitation I have is my PHP environment. Okay. Questions. A couple of questions that have come up. If someone created a second LogicHook file with the same order, one will they run together, or one of them will be overridden? They actually will run one after the other, if I'm not mistaken. I think in that case, let me see what happens. I'm trying to remember. I know I've done this before by accident. I'm trying to remember exactly how it handled the scenario, but it does run both of them. But I don't remember if it does it like in the natural order or what exactly happens at that point. Path to the file is relative to custom folder. It's relative to the root directory, actually. So in this, if you notice the definition file, it says custom modules contacts upper last name. So it's all relative to the root directory. So I could actually put this somewhere completely outside the context of the custom folder if I wanted to. It's just that typically I like to put them in the custom just to highlight the fact that it's a customization, right? All right. So that's the extent of what we need from a code standpoint. Now, We are working with the extensions directory, so what's the one thing we have to remember to do? We have to remember to run a repair, so we'll do that. And actually, you know what? Shoot, I forgot to do something before I did that. I like to check my permissions before I do that, and I forgot to do that. I copied some files in, so I might need to do it a second time around. Let me do that, just to be safe. It's a question that came up. The point about the 7.5 documentation just has bean event arguments, but my example had bean arguments event. So it's pretty much yeah, it should be a bean event argument. I mean, the order doesn't really matter. I mean, it can be confusing just because of the variable names, but you still have the 3 arguments in there. All right, let's do this real quick again. All right, so we're done there, and this should be in place now. So if we were to go to the contact screen and pick out a random contact and click save on it, we should see the last name value automatically be converted to uppercase. There we go. See that?